LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the September 18th edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mixup. Thanks for joining me. I'll be using the dozen best, most newsworthy clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for which should be really educational, informative, fair use, media criticism, and political commentary show for you all today. As you can see from the title of the video, my main topic is workers fight corporate greed. There's a big strike going on against the big three American auto makers, and most of my clips will relate to that, and also about like the greater problems of income inequality. And Bernie Sanders has some really cogent things to say about whether the people at the top or the workers are going to benefit from the increased productivity we get from artificial intelligence and robotics. And you can look forward to that. And down in the video description, you can see short summaries of all 12 clips I'm going to show you. But as usual, I like to start off with political comedy. And this clip comes from Kristen Welker's debut as the moderator of Meet the Press. That's been kind of controversial in some circles because she spent pretty much the whole program on an interview that she did with Donald Trump. And I'd like to point out that the whole thing is available free on YouTube, the entire Meet the Press program from yesterday. In fact, I will, hold on one second, I'm going to put that in the live comments so that you can watch the whole thing yourself if you want to judge what they did. Personally, I thought they did an okay job of, they doing editing to insert fact checks because, the fire hose of lies coming from Donald Trump's mouth was like too much in the live setting to totally do fact checking on it as usual. But I also really like the way that Kristen Welker got Trump to heavily undermine one of his defenses to the charges, both federal and in Georgia, that he illegally attempted to overturn the 2020 election results. And I'll talk about that a little more after we watch it. I found this, as a former criminal defense attorney, I found this really amusing. That's why it's the political comedy of the week, and I'll talk about it a little more after we watch it together over here.
Move on to January 6th and the allegations that you tried to subvert the election. And again, I just want to give you a chance to talk about this because voters want to hear about this. The most senior lawyers in your own administration and on your campaign told you that after you'd lost more than 60 legal challenges, that it was over. Why did you ignore them and decide to listen to a new outside group?
Because I didn't respect them.
You'd hired
lawyers,
them.
Sure, but that doesn't mean, you hire them, you never met these people, you get a recommendation, they turn out to be rhinos or they turn out to be not so good. In many cases, I didn't respect them, but I did respect others. I respected many others that said the election was rigged.
You called some of your outside lawyers. You said they had crazy theories. Why were you listening to them? Were you listening to them because they were telling you what you wanted to hear?
You know who I listened to myself? I saw what happened. I watched that election, and I thought the election was over at 10 o'clock in the evening.
You were listening to your instincts.
My instincts are a big part of it. That's been the thing that's gotten me to where I am, my instincts. But I also listen to people. There are many lawyers. I could give you many books. There are books that are written on how the election was rigged. There are numerous books that were written on how the election was rigged.
Just to be clear, were you listening to your lawyer's advice or were you listening to your own instincts?
I was listening to different people, and when I added it all up, the election was rigged. There are books
were you
that
calling
are written.
The shots, though?
In fact, Molly Hemingway wrote a great book.
But were you
called
calling
Rigged.
the shots ultimately?
Excuse me. Molly Hemingway, who's highly respected and great, she wrote a book, a best-selling book called Rigged.
Were you calling the shots, though, Mr. President, ultimately?
As to whether or not I believed it was rigged, oh, sure.
Okay.
It was my decision, but I listened to some people. Some people said that.
So, yeah, that was actually a good cross-examination tactic playing to Trump's narcissism and, always wanting to, who was really calling the shots. Of course, Trump's going to say he was calling the shots. And the thing is that significantly undermined one of Trump's defenses, the reliance on the advice of counsel defense, where you say that, I couldn't have committed the crime because my lawyer told me this was legal or whatever. Although I talked about this several weeks ago, and Trump already had some problems with that defense. In order to, there are several elements you have to meet for the defense of I relied on the advice of counsel. One is you have to be completely candid with your lawyer. That's one of the elements. And has Trump ever been completely candid with anyone? No, I don't think so. You also have to you have to act in good faith on the advice of counsel, which has Trump ever acted in good faith on anything? And you can see even in that questioning, some people said this, some people said other things, and I picked the ones that I found most benefited me, and that's like all the way on your way to, or a large part of the way on your way to the corrupt intent necessarily for like obstruction of an official proceeding and various other charges. But anyway, that was one good thing that definitely came out of the Meet the Press interview that Kristen Welker did with Donald Trump. All the people complaining about him spewing all these lies, he definitely did. They did some good fact checking. He is the, front runner for the Republican nomination. Maybe there's a significant chance he's going to be president again. So it's not like he shouldn't be interviewed in a confrontational way by journalists. And Kristen Welker, I think, did a pretty good job. And especially when they brought it to the editing room, like I said, they did a lot of fact checking, and they also got that little nugget and even later they had attorneys. When I first saw that was as a criminal defense attorney, I immediately said, she got him. And like multiple times, Trump has been in interviews and like admitted things that really undermined his defenses. And I immediately saw that during the interview. And then they even ran a little segment later in the program talking about how that was one of the significant things in the interview where he undermined his defense of reliance on the advice of counsel. They didn't mention the candor element. They talked about relying on the advice of counsel in good faith, but didn't really talk about the candor element. So anyway, I wanted to start off showing that clip. I saw some complaints in the live comments about even platforming Donald Trump, I guess, here on my live stream. That was 106 seconds. That was like under 2 minutes. So settle down, settle down. I don't think I really platformed Trump that much. I only showed the part where he kind of admitted to a crime or helped the prosecution convict him of a crime. So that's something, isn't it? You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. And now I'm going to get to the news summaries from longest to shortest. And the longest one this week was the CBS News Face the Nation one, and it focused on my main topic, I don't know if they use the words corporate greed, but they do show Bernie Sanders in here. I don't think he says corporate greed in the clip they show, but they kind of talk about the issues. It is a little bit corporatist, and I'll explain that a little more after we watch Margaret Brennan's intro, and then their reporter Kris Van Cleave talking about the United Auto Workers Union striking against the big three automakers over in this clip.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. We begin this morning with United Auto Workers' simultaneous strike against Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler parent Stellantis. Roughly 8% of the union's workers stopped work at plants in Ohio, Michigan, and Missouri after their contracts expired Thursday night. The union says if they don't get a deal, they'll walk out of additional plants. Talks continued throughout the weekend and will resume with Stellantis tomorrow. Senior transportation correspondent Kris Van Cleave is in Toledo, Ohio with the latest.
Hitting automakers in their bottom line. For a third day, nearly 13,000 United Auto Workers have pumped the brakes at plants in Michigan, Ohio, and Missouri, striking after their union contract with the nation's big three automakers ran out.
I'm here for the long haul. Yep. The long haul. If I have to be out here, rain, sleet, snow, thunderstorm, tornado, striking, I'm here.
I don't think they're honking for the CEOs.
And they're getting the backing of high-profile Democrats. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman joined the picket line, while Vermont's Bernie Sanders headlined a huge rally just feet from the Detroit Auto Show.
It is totally reasonable for auto workers to finally receive a fair share of the record-breaking profits that their labor has produced.
About an hour south of Detroit, there are 10,000 auto workers here in Toledo. More than half of them are now on strike at this Jeep plant. But that likely has more to do with what's built here. The popular and lucrative Jeep Wrangler and Jeep Gladiator, vehicles that could soon be in short supply on dealer lots.
Most of us can't even afford the vehicles that we're building.
Robert Vasquez has worked at the Toledo plant since 1997.
We're in it to the end. You know, we want our fair share.
The union is seeking a 36% raise with cost of living increases to counter inflation, the unwinding of concessions made during the Great Recession, and worker protection as the companies transition to less labor-intensive electric vehicles. They also want a 4-day work week and a return of pensions. Both are non-starters for the automakers. The big three are offering about a 20% raise.
It's a record from a gross wage increase perspective in our 115-year history.
Can GM be successful if you met all their demands?
Actually, no. The life of the contract, the initial demands were over $100 billion. We still have a ways to go.
GM now expects to idle a plant in Kansas, and Ford announced 600 temporary layoffs blamed on ripple effects from the strike.
That was Kris Van Cleave reporting from Toledo. We turn now to United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain.
And I am going to show a clip of Shawn Fain. Wasn't that the political arm of the Irish Republican Army, the IRA? Wasn't Shawn Fain? No, that Sinn Féin, not Shawn Fain. But anyway, pretty close. I noticed that yesterday. He was on multiple programs, Shawn Fain, and I'll have a clip of that later, clip number 12, if you're looking down in the video description at the short summaries of the clips. I mean, they kind of got into the issues there that you never saw them actually talking about corporate greed, I notice. And one thing about that news summary, this is like the still frame I used in my thumbnail for this video, but this is the most they wrote. You see how it says stand up for our communities against corporate it like they never I think it's corporate greed. Is that actually corporate media, the corporate media bias that I talk about, where corporations don't even want you to be able to see the words corporate greed? Like CBS News Face the Nation there showed you the rally, but they didn't show you the words corporate greed. Somehow that just got cut off. Now, was it intentional? I don't know. You can let me know what you think. Maybe it was just the best way to frame the people on the stage, but I don't know. They did not show Bernie Sanders talking about corporate greed there. I will show Bernie Sanders talking about corporate greed on CNN's State of the Union when I show Jake Tapper asking him questions. But the next news summary I want to show you is probably the most biased of the news summaries because, of course, it's not from a journalistic news organization. It's from Fox News. This is Fox News Sunday. And as we all know, Fox News is not a journalistic news organization. It's a propaganda outlet of the Republican Party, which is what Roger Ailes created Fox News to be, as you can see outlined in this book over here, The Loudest Voice in the Room by Gabriel Sherman, will explain to you the history of how that happened, or go to my YouTube channel and you can see hundreds of examples of Fox News's political bias, and there's definitely political bias in this news summary. Shannon Bream and then Lucas Tomlinson, they talk about the impeachment inquiry into President Biden. They don't talk about how the Republicans never put it to the House floor for a vote, even though that's something they really complained about with the Trump impeachments and said they would, never just have the Speaker of the House announce an impeachment inquiry. It would take a House vote, but no, they didn't do that. And you'll see that Lucas Tomlinson doesn't include that in his report. They talk about Biden voices support for the striking auto workers. They mentioned the auto workers strike, and then they put in this dig, but refuses to support his own son. That's one of the biases you'll see. I'm pre-criticizing the clip as usual. And they talk about prices being up. Oh, and they also talk about how Biden predicted this strike wouldn't happen, and then it did. They do everything they can to increase Biden's negatives, and you'll see that subtext again when I get to the Fox News Sunday newsmaker clip. But first, let's look at the Fox News Sunday news summary from yesterday together over here.
Hello from Fox News in Washington. The race is on to avoid a federal government shutdown. Lawmakers have less than a dozen working days to pass a series of spending bills. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy working to get the most conservative members of his party in check while simultaneously launching an impeachment inquiry into the president. It's all playing out as Biden's reelection effort faces concerns from within his own party about plummeting poll numbers and his son Hunter's indictment on gun charges. In a moment, House Republican Elise Stefanik of New York and California Democrat Ro Khanna will join me to discuss the funding showdown. But first, let's turn to Lucas Tomlinson traveling with the president in Wilmington, Delaware. Hello, Lucas.
Shannon, President Biden returned here to his home in Wilmington to rest and reset after that tough week, as you mentioned. Issues not likely to go away anytime soon.
Should Hunter get a pardon, Mr. President?
President Biden voicing his support for the striking auto workers, declining to do the same for his own son Hunter 1 day after he was indicted on 3 gun charges, months after saying he did nothing wrong. It's the first time in U.S. history workers from all 3 Detroit automakers went on strike, days after Biden predicted they would not. The strike capping a challenging week for the president, which included a new report showing inflation increasing for a second straight month, fueled by increasing gas prices, now up 50% from when Biden took office. Food is up nearly 20% over the same period. The inflation report out 1 day after House Speaker Kevin McCarthy launched an impeachment inquiry.
These are allegations of abuse of power, obstruction, and corruption.
A White House spokesman says this is all to appease McCarthy's Republican critics.
He is being attacked from his right, and he's throwing them red meat.
McCarthy hopes the probe paves the way for the House to pass a new budget by month's end to avoid a government shutdown. The top House Democrat called it a 3-ring circus. Many Republicans disagree.
The public deserves to know the facts.
Hunter Biden is due to return to a courtroom here in Wilmington in about a week to face those gun charges, and more tax charges could be coming. Shannon?
Lucas Tomlinson in Wilmington. Thanks, Lucas. Joining us now, House Republican Conference Chair Elise Stefanik. Welcome back to
and I will not have a clip of Elise Stefanik. There are actually 2 Republicans on the program, Elise Stefanik and then Vivek Ramaswamy. Shannon Bream didn't ask either of them anything about the strike or whether they sided with the workers or sided with the CEOs and the big corporations. And the only clip I have is Ro Khanna, where Shannon Bream had all these negative things to say about the green energy initiative, how that's hurting workers. And then isn't Biden bungling this? Aren't people saying Biden's, well, whatever, I'm getting ahead of myself to the newsmaker clips. But I pretty much pre-criticized that clip. But one thing I wanted to point out or make even more clear, the criticism I made about how Fox News isn't, they did sort of report in that news summary, Kevin McCarthy ordered the beginning of the impeachment inquiry, but they don't talk about how Republicans said that was a total violation and that, unless there's a House vote, there can't be an impeachment inquiry. I remember they said that over and over again, almost exactly 4 years ago. And because I've been doing these clip roundups for so long, I actually have a little clip from September 29th, 2019, almost exactly 4 years ago. Kevin Corke reporting on Nancy Pelosi ordering an impeachment inquiry, and you'll notice they mentioned there was no vote over in this very brief clip over here.
There's a lot of moving parts here in Washington, but were it to come to pass, President Trump would be the 4th U.S. president to face impeachment.
We cannot have a president of the United States undermining his oath of office.
Explosive charges from the House Speaker in a week that saw her declare, without a single vote on the House floor, an impeachment inquiry.
Without a single vote on the House floor. Somehow that didn't show up in the news summary on Fox News Sunday yesterday, though Shannon Bream did ask Elise Stefanik about not having the vote or not having the votes. But I'm not going to show you that clip. Like I said, I'm going to show you the Ro Khanna clip, clip 11, but that was clip 4. Now we're going to the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary. Jonathan Karl much more briefly covers the main topics in an adequate way over here.
Good morning. Welcome to This Week. With more accusations than evidence, Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy launched an impeachment inquiry of President Biden this week, a bid perhaps to placate hardline members of his party and the leading Republican presidential candidate, the twice impeached former president. This morning, we'll talk to the top Democrat in the House, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Democrats see Jeffries as a speaker in waiting, just 5 seats away from taking the gavel. He's leading a strikingly unified House minority, while the actual Speaker of the House, McCarthy, struggles to keep together a loudly divided Republican majority. While Democrats expressed outrage over the impeachment inquiry, the special counsel, appointed by Biden's own attorney general, indicted the president's son, Hunter, on charges that he lied about being drug-free when he purchased a gun in October of 2018. All of this is going down as Congress seems to be barreling towards a government shutdown. If that happens, and it sure seems like it will, Democrats will blame Republicans. But congressional chaos can hurt the economy, and that's not good for President Biden, regardless of who's to blame. We'll get to it all, including Donald Trump's latest legal troubles, but we begin with New York's Democratic Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, the top.
And I will have a clip of Hakeem Jeffries talking about the striking auto workers. That's clip number 10. But let's finish up the news summaries. Before I get to the next one, one thing I liked about Jonathan Karl there, they talked about the impeachment inquiry started by Republicans against Biden as having more accusations than evidence, which is, I guess, something of an understatement. But to be fair and balanced, they also talked about the new indictment of Hunter Biden on gun charges. It's basically the same old gun charges, just a new indictment in a different venue in Delaware, I think is what happened. It was like in the wrong venue, and now it's in the right venue, or I think that's why they had to dismiss and file those charges. But anyway, like I said, I want to finish the news summaries here. CNN State of the Union, Jake Tapper, also covering in a very short minute the same basic topics over here.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the state of our union is at each other's throats. For the first time, auto workers are on strike against all 3 of the big 3 car manufacturers simultaneously. It's the latest and most powerful union to voice concern about a growing pay gap between workers and CEOs. That strike, one factor that could impact America's fragile economic recovery. Another, on Capitol Hill, while House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has less than 2 weeks to avert a painful government shutdown that some of his members are embracing in the name of spending cuts as the nation's political divisions grow even more fraught. House Republicans are also juggling an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, despite what one prominent House conservative says is a flimsy basis. One thing that has not changed, the Republican field. Former President Trump's rivals are still trying to cut into what is a commanding lead. And joining me now, Republican presidential candidate, former Vice President.
And I will have a clip of Mike Pence, who, under questioning from Jake Tapper, eventually does say that he sides with the free enterprise system, and it's okay if the CEO of General Motors makes 362 times as much as the typical GM worker. That clip will be coming up. Clip 8. Oh, that's the clip after next. I'm almost done with the news summaries. I guess the last one is the introduction of Kristen Welker as the new moderator of Meet the Press. You can see she introduces herself, talks about the new chapter for Meet the Press. I saw someone, who was it? Somebody pointed out, I think it might have been, I can't remember who it was, but somebody pointed out that all 5 of the big 5 corporate outlets are now anchored or co-anchored by women. Jake Tapper co-anchors with Dana Bash, so it's 5 women. I think it was Kristen Welker at the end of Meet the Press said that. I can check. I'll look at the transcript while we're watching this 1-minute news summary where she introduces the issues, and especially her interview with Donald Trump that I already showed you all I'm going to show you of that. Don't worry, no more Meet the Press Donald Trump coming from me, but here's Kristen Welker introducing it in the final news summary I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Sunday morning, we begin this new chapter of Meet the Press after yet another extraordinary week in American politics. House Republicans announced an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. The president's son, Hunter, was indicted on gun charges, and House conservatives doubled down on their threat to shut down the government. Meanwhile, people close to President Biden are increasingly worried his son's legal troubles could strain the president's focus on what's expected to be a razor-close election. It was against that backdrop that I sat down with the former president at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. His first network interview since leaving office. We have extended the same invitation to President Biden. Mr. Trump has been criminally indicted 4 times and faces 91 felony counts, but continues to hold a commanding lead as the Republican frontrunner. I began by asking Mr. Trump what a second term would look like if he's reelected.
So yeah, there you see Kristen Welker introducing herself, and I did look at the Meet the Press transcript while I was watching that clip with you, and you can see at the end she says all 5 Sunday shows are moderated or co-moderated by women. I forgot that they called them the moderator on Meet the Press. So to Martha, Margaret, Dana, and Shannon, I'm incredibly honored to join you on Sunday mornings. I just put that quote in the live comments there, but that was the last of the news summaries. You can let me know which one you think summarized the events of the week best of the big 5 corporate outlets. Now I'm going to show you the newsmakers all talking about my main topic, the workers fighting corporate greed. And I think actually Jake Tapper did the best job of asking questions. First, this is great. I was talking about this before the previous clip that Jake Tapper points out that the CEO of General Motors makes 362 times what the typical worker makes. It used to be like 20 times, like back in the 70s, and they've gotten, the rich have gotten so much richer, and the workers continue to struggle. In the next clip, I'm going to show Jake Tapper getting some good answers out of Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders, talking about corporate greed and about who's going to benefit from increased productivity in the future. But first, here's Mike Pence trying to blame it all on Biden and avoid, saying he's with the workers, but he's actually really with the corporations. That's what he's really saying when he says, let's let the free market take care of it. But I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Talk about the auto workers strike.
You
blamed the strike on President Biden's policies. Most Americans, 75% according to Gallup, support the strikers. As a general principle, do you think it's fair that the CEO of General Motors makes 362 times what a typical GM employee makes?
Well, let me say what I don't think is fair is that Joe Biden has put forward an economic agenda from the very outset that launched the worst inflation in 40 years. I mean, literally, the cost of living has gone up almost 17% since we left office. Their war on energy has caused gasoline prices to go through the roof, and I have no doubt in my mind that all those hardworking auto workers are living in the same reality every other American's living in, and that is wages are not keeping up with inflation. I also think that this green agenda that is using taxpayer dollars to drive our automotive economy into electric vehicles is understandably causing great anxiety among UAW members. These guys are seeing the Green New Deal that was passed under the guise of an Inflation Reduction Act. They're seeing it driving their industry into electric vehicles, benefiting China that makes most of our batteries. And I think they're pushing back rightly. And I also think the American people stand behind them in the numbers you suggest, because we're all living in the failed reality of Bidenomics today, Jake.
But there's also this issue of general fairness. In 1965, during this era of the great middle class expansion in the United States, CEOs made about 20 times what their typical workers made. But as I noted to you, the CEO of GM makes 362 times what her typical employees make. I just want to make sure I get an answer from you. Is that okay? Do you think that's fair?
Well, I think that ought to be left to the shareholders of that company. I'm somebody that believes in free enterprise. I think those are decisions that can be made by shareholders in creating pressure, and I'll fully support how these publicly traded companies operate. I'm not interested in government mandates or government bullying when it comes to those kind of issues. And I got to tell you, I don't think it's about the usual fault lines of the difference in salaries between white collar and blue collar. I think it's that everyday Americans out there working hard are living in the midst of the failed policies of Bidenomics.
Inflation's been horrible, no question, but their wages haven't gone up since the auto bailout in 2008. Meanwhile, the CEOs, their wages have gone up 40% in the last 5 years. That's what the union workers say as to why they're striking. I guess just a question here. Do you side with the CEOs or do you side with the union here?
I side with American workers. I side with all American families. I side with the people of this country, Jake, that are living under the failed policies of the Biden administration. Families are struggling. Families are hurting. They know we need new leadership in the White House. I've got a vision, MikePence2024.com, to tackle inflation, to revive and unleash American energy. That's what we're talking about, and that's where every American is focused today.
So, yeah, Mike Pence got his talking points in. Jake Tapper finally got him to admit, he doesn't really have any problem with CEOs making 362 times the typical worker, and that's just our free enterprise system and all. And I thought that was really good questioning by Jake Tapper with, the facts of how lopsided it is, how the workers haven't had they made all these concessions back in 2008 when, the Great Recession or whatever with the auto bailout, and they made all these concessions so that a lot of their workers don't even have they don't have pensions anymore. They don't have retirement health care. That all that was given up. You kind of saw that in the CBS News Face the Nation news summary. But what I found really interesting was Senator Bernie Sanders' reaction to what you saw Mike Pence say there. That's the first question Jake Tapper asked him. And then Jake Tapper asked a follow-up question about the 4-day work week. Like, is that just a negotiating tactic or whatever? But surprisingly, it got the best answer out of Bernie Sanders about how this isn't just about an auto workers strike. This is really about our whole economy and who's going to benefit from the big changes that are coming. And that's why, this is the clip of the week, really. If this is the most important clip I'm going to show you today. Bernie Sanders really describing the choices we have coming up for our economy that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Senator Sanders, Vice President Pence was on the show earlier. He said, when I asked him about the fact that the CEOs make multiples more than their average workers, 362 times more in the case of Ford, I said, do you think that's fair? He said, CEO pay is up to free enterprise. It's up to shareholders, not the government. What's your response?
No, I strongly disagree. I think what's going on in America today in terms of income and wealth inequality, the fact that CEOs are now making 400 times more than their average worker, the fact that we have 3 people on top who own more wealth than the bottom half of America, the fact that during the last 50 years, the weekly wages of the average American worker are lower today than they were back then, speaks to the anger that the American people are feeling and what this strike is about. The American people are sick and tired, in my view, Jake, and I've been all over this country. They are sick and tired of corporate greed in which the very richest people are becoming richer. The head of General Motors now makes $29 million a year, and yet if you're a new worker in the big 3, you make less than $17 an hour. They have temp workers who are temp year after year after year who make far lower wages than other workers. You have profits there, $21 billion in profits in the first half of this year. So what you're seeing in the automobile industry, in my view, is what we're seeing all over this economy. greed on the top, suffering on the part of the working class, and people are tired of it.
I want to get to some of those bigger issues in a second, but first I want to ask you, this push from the UAW for a 4-day work week, is that a negotiating tactic, or do you see that as the future of labor in the U.S., a 4-day work week?
Well, I'll tell you what I think, and thanks for raising that question, Jake. We are looking at an explosion in this country of artificial intelligence and robotics. And that means that the average worker is going to be much more productive. Worker productivity is going to increase significantly. The question as a nation that we have got to ask ourselves is who is going to benefit from that increased productivity? Is all of that new income and wealth being created by worker productivity going to go to the people on top, or are workers going to benefit? So right now, in my view, I happen to believe that as a nation, we should begin a serious discussion, and the UAW is doing that, about substantially lowering the work week. People in America are stressed out for a dozen different reasons. And that's one of the reasons why life expectancy in our country is actually in decline. People are overwhelmed. They got to take care of their kids. They got to worry about healthcare. They got to worry about housing. They're worried. It seems to me that if new technology is going to make us a more productive society, the benefit should go to the workers. And it would be an extraordinary thing to see people have more time to be able to spend with their kids, with their families, to be able to do more in cultural activities, get a better education. So the idea of making sure that artificial intelligence, robotics benefits us all, just not the people on top, is something absolutely we need to be discussing.
So, wow, yeah, as my longtime viewers know, I voted for Senator Bernie Sanders in the California primary, both in 2016 and 2020, although I ended up voting for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden in the general elections. I'm a big fan of Bernie Sanders. I think he is an important voice that hopefully will continue to influence our politics to support the rights of workers against corporate greed that he was talking about there. He has his talking points about like the top 3 rich people in the U.S. having more money than like the bottom 50%. And he talked about the CEOs making 400 times the workers. But that last part about, who is really going to benefit from the increased productivity brought by artificial intelligence and robotics. That was the only place that topic got brought up in any of the big 5 corporate outlets. That was something like, it reminds me of Andrew Yang back in the universal basic income discussions back in 2020. That I don't know where that went, but anyway, that is, that's like the real issues there from Bernie Sanders. That was like the best way to articulate the issues that the striking United Auto Workers are exemplifying for. Well, of course, there's the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild also striking against other big corporations, and it is kind of like there was a summer UPS almost strike. They almost went on strike, and then they got a better contract. And workers are definitely getting more power, especially because of the low unemployment of the Biden administration. Wages have actually gone up a lot. They didn't beat inflation for a lot of the Biden administration, but this year they did. So workers are catching up a little bit, and the UAW may actually help that effort. We'll see how that goes. But the next clip, I have 2 clips of Democrats, and then I'm going to end with the president of the United Auto Workers, Shawn Fain. But I wanted to show Hakeem Jeffries, who is like the up-and-coming leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, took over for Nancy Pelosi. He's the House Minority Leader. This answer to Jonathan Karl on ABC's This Week is half as long as what Bernie Sanders said in that last clip, but also kind of weaker. He's not as good a spokesperson as Bernie Sanders, in my opinion, but I mean, he has some good talking points here, but I'll talk about it a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Okay, obviously this is happening against the backdrop of the UAW strike. Are you going to Detroit? Are you with the auto workers on this?
I'll be heading to Detroit a little later on today, looking forward to standing in solidarity with the United Auto Workers, who are fighting for the fundamental American dream, which is quite simple. If you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to provide a comfortable living for yourself, for your family, educate your children, purchase a home, and one day retire with grace and dignity. That's the principle upon which the United Auto Workers are standing, and I stand with them.
How long do you think this is going to drag on?
Well, I think it's all of our hope that it'll end sooner rather than later, but record profits have been generated. Incredible economic prosperity has been generated for the corporations upon whom the UAW works with. And so I think it's only fair that everyone share in those record profits, in the prosperity that has been created. That's a fundamental American principle. That's why we were able to build, in the aftermath of World War II, the great American middle class. And we need to keep that going for everyone.
So, I mean, those talking points were okay, but nowhere near as good as Bernie Sanders. There's a lot of use of the passive voice. Corporate profits were generated. It was workers that did that. And Bernie Sanders is so much better at that than Hakeem Jeffries, if you want my opinion. But I guess Bernie Sanders has had a lot more practice. Hakeem Jeffries has room to grow into the Bernie Sanders role, I guess. You can let me know what you think juxtaposing those two clips, but I have two more clips to juxtapose before I finish the program here. Both of these have to do with electric vehicles, EVs. How are they contributing to the problems that American auto workers are having? Here you're going to see Shannon Bream first talking to Ro Khanna saying, well, isn't it like the EV mandates that are really causing the problems for workers? And it's basically the subtext, as I said earlier in the program, this is all like ways to blame the strike on Biden. And at the end, she talks about how somebody said that Biden like effed it up. And did he bungle this? And and you'll see Shannon Bream actually uses the phrase effed it up. And they had talked about there was reporting on Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, earlier in the program saying, file the effing bill. And Shannon Bream said effing then earlier in the program. So I'm just telling you that to explain why during this questioning, when she gets to that follow-up question, she says, this is the second time in the program I've said the word effing. Okay, well, effing Fox News for you. And I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
I want to start with you with one of our other big stories this weekend, which is the UAW strike against the three big automakers. You are going to go and be in solidarity with the workers there. Senator J.D. Vance, he's a Republican. He says he's pro-labor. He is pulling for these workers. But he adds this: every time the Biden administration subsidizes an EV component made in China, every time his administration drives up the price of gasoline, there is an American auto worker who loses bargaining power. He says UAW leadership encouraged its membership to vote for the man he calls the most anti-car president in history, and that nobody should be shocked that these policies are now leading to a place where these workers are striking.
Well, we shouldn't be politicizing this. We should be listening to what the UAW workers want. They want us to tackle climate. They want EVs. They want battery plants, but they want those jobs to pay well. They want those jobs to be union jobs. And that's what we're fighting for. I mean, when you have Mary Barra making $30 million, when you have $5 billion in stock buybacks, when you have these big three auto companies making $21 billion, we can pay auto workers more than $16 and they can have good paying jobs. And that's what this fight is about.
Well, the New York Times suggests that these workers are not actually excited about EVs, that they're working and striking to try to protect their manufacturing jobs because it would take fewer jobs to actually put those cars together. America First Policy Institute says this: forcing American automakers to make electric vehicles that the American people do not want and cannot afford is understandably causing hardworking UAW members to worry about their financial future. A lot of conversation about the fact that the push for green energy, that we're not ready for the full transition to something like EVs, that's actually hurting these workers.
Shannon, it is true that an electric vehicle requires less jobs than a traditional auto vehicle, but you have to look at the entire supply chain. And when you factor in the battery plants and other parts of the supply chain, then you have a lot of jobs. And what most of these workers want is just good paying manufacturing jobs. So the question isn't, are they making internal combustion engines or EVs? The question is, are those going to be family supporting wages? They understand that the world is changing, that there are new energy sources. They want to lead there, but they want to make sure those are good paying jobs. And I believe UAW will prevail in its reasonable demands.
There's a lot of reporting that people within the UAW, including its leader, are not thrilled with the way that this president has been handling this issue. Politico quotes one of your colleagues, fellow House Democrat Debbie Dingell, as unloading on the White House about how they've handled this whole situation, asking a top Biden advisor, quote, "Are you out of your effing minds?" It's our second effing of the show today. We are editing that. But how is this man who's described as the most pro-union president in history bungling this?
Well, look, you have someone on his advisory board going to stand with the UAW workers. I penned an op-ed with Shawn Fain just 2 days ago saying that the workers are in the right, the big three auto companies are not. Gene Sperling on the president's team is siding with the workers. I believe the question is, are you going to side with the workers to get higher wages, or are you going to side with the big three auto companies? And the president is clearly on the side of the workers. And when they are resolved, I think he's going to continue to enjoy their support.
Okay, sorry. The quote there was, "Are you out of your effing mind?" Not that Biden was effing it up, but she was saying that Biden was effing up. Why is Biden effing this up or bungling it? That's what I said before the clip, but I got the effing the effing quote. It was out of your effing mind. And I mean, Ro Khanna did an okay job of responding to the question about the electric vehicles, the EVs, whether they're part of the problem for the unions, that it takes less labor to create electric vehicles, and the battery plants, the factories that make the batteries for electronic vehicles are generally not unionized. And I thought actually Shawn Fain, the head of the United Auto Workers Union, did a better job of responding to those issues, talking to Margaret Brennan over on Face the Nation. This is my final newsmaker clip. And Shawn Fain talks about how, that's the problem. We need more unionized shops. Maybe the battery factories should be unionized. And he also talks about how, auto workers, they live in the world. They don't want climate change. They care about whether we're killing the planet. And that is where the unions are in favor of green energy initiatives. And anyway, I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that final newsmaker clip together. UAW President Shawn Fain on CBS News Face the Nation yesterday, together over here.
Ford's CEO said last November that electric vehicles are going to require 40% less labor to produce than combustion vehicles. I know it may not be the intention, but I wonder how you think this transition to electric vehicles may be eating away at your union strength.
Well, I don't believe it's eating away at our union strength. It is the way it is right now. Unfortunately, this is what's wrong with our economy, and this is what's wrong with America right now. The billionaire class keeps taking more and more, and the working class keeps getting left behind. And the unfortunate part in this transition right now, like always, go back to the Great Recession. The banks got bailed out by our taxpayer dollars, and they just kept on doing what they do, while working class people's homes got foreclosed on.
Automakers got bailed out too.
Go back to the, yes, automakers got bailed out,
taxpayers
and
lost
again,
money on that.
The workers were unfairly blamed for everything that was wrong with those companies. It was bad decisions on the parts of the companies that put us in that position. And the sad reality is The workers paid the price for that. We made all the sacrifices, and after a decade of massive profits, the workers have went backwards. Our wages have went backwards. Our benefits have went backwards. The majority of our members have zero retirement security now. And meanwhile, it's insulting that a CEO gets on air in the last few days and says that her $29 million salary is justified by her performance. No, it's not. It's justified by the performance of the worker on the backs of the workers and by paying them poverty wages. And that's unacceptable in this country.
Well, I know. You've also said, though, it's a shell game to talk about, CEOs handing back part of their money. You're talking about something that's more fundamental to the structure of this entire sector of the economy. And that's why I'm asking you about the transition, because many of the factories in this country that make batteries for those electric vehicles are not unionized. And that is where the White House is pushing the industry to go, more towards those electric vehicles. Isn't that part of this challenge for you, leverage-wise?
So the challenge is, where we're going to go as a country. Again, I get back to this point. Our tax dollars are financing a massive portion of this transition to EV. We believe in a green economy. We have to have clean water. We have to have clean air. Anyone that doesn't believe global warming is happening isn't paying attention. But this transition has to be a just transition. And a just transition means if our tax dollars are going to finance this transition, then labor can't be left behind. And as it stands right now, the workers are being left behind. The companies want to talk about being competitive. It's not about being competitive. Competitive is a code word for race to the bottom. What they want is they want to pay us poverty wages so they can keep on making billions more in profits, and they can keep enriching the shareholders and the CEOs and the corporate executives while the workers pay the price for it and get left behind. That's got to stop in this country.
So yeah, I thought Sean Fain there did a better job of responding to the electric vehicle question than Ro Khanna did on Fox News Sunday, although Ro Khanna did kind of refer to what the UAW workers wanted, and Sean Fain is in a better position to really be a spokesperson for that, since he's the president of the United Auto Workers Union. So anyway, that was the last of the clips I picked out for you. I hope you appreciate the time and effort I put into watching all the corporate news outlets and putting together this program of a dozen clips with my media criticism and political commentary. I will be making my Monday media mix-ups all the way through January 2025, when we find out whether Biden's going to be reelected or Trump's going to be president, or maybe somebody else. Who knows? That's one of the that's why I'm going to keep doing the Monday media mix-ups all the way through January 2025, because as we learned on January 6, 2021, it's not till January that you really know whether there's going to be a peaceful transfer of power or not, and it's still up in the air here in the United States. And so I'm going to keep covering it for over a year, and I noticed my live stream this week didn't get a lot of live viewers attending, but I appreciate those of you who showed up. I know I mix up the time of the program, and that makes it harder to attend, or maybe people don't care about workers fighting against corporate greed, or I guess we'll see. But maybe I'll cut out parts of this program into a shorter video that people can watch later in the week. I could do something about Donald Trump undermining one of his defenses, or I could juxtapose some of those other clips. I don't know. If you want to let me know what you think in the comment section as to which parts of this program are best suited to being edited down into shorter clips. Anyway, I do appreciate those of you who showed up today to spend this time with me watching the clips, and I also appreciate the recorded show viewers. I think today is Constitution Day too, so for those of you who have one of these ACLU constitutions I send out, this is the day to celebrate. But anyway, I will be back next Monday and every Monday through January 2025, and maybe I'll have some other reason to upload a video this week, and Until then, or until next Monday, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.